it was promoted as a way for President Trump to support law enforcement as part of his policy to take over law enforcement in the nation's capital. President Trump would be on patrol with the National Guard in D.C. last night.
We were hearing that, right? But what happened?
Well, instead he had a pizza party with federal and local law enforcement before they hit the streets. This was posted on X by the special assistant to the president and communications advisor, Margot Martin. Tara, please tell us more.
But don't forget the hamburgers. They had that too. Who does not like free food, right? Well, it didn't happen, and probably didn't happen because security and logistics. Can you imagine the logistics to put President Trump on a D.C. ride along with police? So it didn't happen. It was not on the public schedule, so it may not have been authorized or even planned. And also, there is also the chance he said this to Todd Starn, a conservative talk show radio host, just to get the media attention, because that's pretty much all anyone talked about all day. Instead, what he did was he made that 44-minute stop at a U.S. Park Police facility in D.C., where he addressed 300 National Guard troops and federal law enforcement. He praised the crackdown, talked about beautifying D.C., that big, beautiful bill, and building a ballroom at the White House. A lot of folks, guys, are saying this is more like a campaign-style event.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the ballroom has to do with the crackdown on crime. And by the way, Tara, do you have any word on how many arrests have actually been made during this crackdown the last couple of weeks?
I actually do have some numbers for you. Since the intervention started on August 7th, and they've had help with agencies like the FBI, ICE, and the U.S. Marshals, 631 arrests at last check, including 251 people who are in the U.S. illegally. Also, 86 illegal guns have been taken, one missing child recovered, and a bunch of homeless encampments now cleared. And by the way, D.C. homicides have been not happening since August 13th, we understand. And so it's making a difference, but a lot of folks sure don't like that this is going on.
Now, we were just joking about the pizza, but a critical question, do people feel safer when it comes to crime in D.C.? There seems to be maybe more or less of a political divide. Speak about that, about for those people who live and work in the nation's capital.
You know, honestly, I think it depends who you're asking. If you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood, you're going to possibly feel one way. If you're in a nicer neighborhood, you may feel totally different. But there is a poll out this morning from the Washington Post, and it interviewed 604 D.C. residents, and 80% say they disapprove of the federal takeover. 65% think it will not improve safety, and 78% say they still feel safe in their neighborhoods. But what we don't know is who was polled, how the question was asked, because certainly a lot of people here in D.C. do feel that crime is definitely an issue.
And Tara, just so I understand, the numbers that you gave us, that is obviously very heartening if there hasn't been a murder for the past week. I mean, it's incredible that that's our standard. But can you just help us, give us some perspective of what it has been before the National Guard? In other words, one of the things that I had read was that the National Guard has seized a bunch of illegal guns off the streets. Everybody's comforted by that. But that it was just a handful more than what they had seized before the cops had seized before the National Guard showed up. So what's the context in terms of how much they really are making a dent?
Well, if you look at the numbers, one of the criticisms by the D.C. officials is that, you know, before the feds moved in, that crime in D.C. was at a 30-year low and 28% lower than last year. So 28% lower. Yes, 28% lower than last year. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, they're saying that things weren't bad before, that things were already improving. So while they are, you know, seizing some guns and picking up children who are missing, at least one, and making these arrests, there's the criticism also that a lot of these arrests are more immigration based and not homicides, not crime, not, you know, the things we would think are afraid of on D.C. streets. It's more based on the migrant population that's moved in.
Are you getting a sense, Tara, of the impact this is having on local businesses, whether it's positive or negative? We've been hearing some information that restaurants are hurting, that people are not going to restaurants to the degree they were before the National Guard showed up. The president said in the Oval Office a few days ago during the Zelensky meeting that restaurant business has never been better. It's a big Big difference. there.
Again, yeah, again, I believe that it's what neighborhood you're in. Again, if you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood, there are business owners who feel better with the police presence. If you're in somewhere where there's not a lot of crime, perhaps having the police presence is going to scare off some customers. So I think it's all where you're coming from. But certainly, you know, in some neighborhoods, it is going to scare off the crime for sure. But again, a lot of business owners have complained. There was a point where write-ups all over the place in the news that people were getting robbed, the customers weren't coming before. So again, depends on your perspective, maybe what your business is. So I think depending where you go in DC, you're going to get some different answers.
Yeah, guys, I don't know about you and you, Tara, but I've done those ride-alongs with the cops. I mean, we all, as reporters, I'm sure, have at one time or another, and you do see action. I mean, I've been with a cop where there was a bank robbery in progress. I've been with the cops where they've pulled over people who were speeding, and it is nerve-wracking. I mean, they put me in, a bulletproof vest. I mean, some of this might be for TV purposes, but then things do happen. So the idea that President Trump was going to go out with them, it would have had to have been such an orchestrated, locked down, basically photo op that it's hard to imagine how that would have worked. And by the way, I mean, Jim and Mark, I think that the cops would appreciate pizza more than having to make sure the president stays alive,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That would have been a logistical nightmare. Secret Service, I mean, they must have just been going, please, no, we can't do this.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Tara, thanks so much for joining us from
You're
DC.
welcome.